Help me, please. I can't breathe. The voice came from beneath the earth. Michelle Simmons froze mid-step on the terrace of the Fredericks estate, champagne flutes trembling on her silver tray. Around her, 200 guests laughed and sipped and celebrated Douglas Frederick's charity gala under crystal chandeliers. But Michelle heard something none of them did, a child's muffled cry rising from the rose garden like a ghost. She turned toward the blooms, her heart hammering. Rita Rollins stood at the garden entrance, brushing dirt from beneath her manicured nails. Douglas's fiancée, the woman in the emerald Valentino dress who'd walked into those roses 20 minutes ago, with 4-year-old Henry holding her hand. The woman now returning alone, smiling that perfect smile while soil clung to her Louboutin heels. Their eyes met. Rita's expression didn't change, but something cold flickered behind her gaze. Recognition, calculation, the look of a predator realizing it's been seen. Michelle's tray slipped from her hands, crystal shattering against marble, because she understood in that terrible moment, Rita had buried the boy alive. And Michelle, invisible, dismissed, just the help, was the only person who knew. Michelle's knees hit the ground before conscious thought caught up. The shattered crystal behind her meant nothing. The guest's startled voices faded to white noise. Her hands clawed at the freshly turned soil near the largest rosebush, dirt jamming beneath her fingernails as she dug. "Henry!" Her voice cracked. "Henry! Baby! I'm coming!" The muffled crying grew louder, desperate, weakening. How long had he been down there? How much air did he have left? "What on earth are you doing?" Michelle didn't stop digging. Her fingers scraped something hard. Wood, a crate of some kind, buried shallow but packed tight with earth. She could hear him clearer now, sobbing, calling for his daddy. "Michelle..." Rita's voice dropped lower, losing its performative warmth. "You're making a scene. The guests can see you from the terrace." "There's a child under here!" Michelle's hands bled from rose thorns and splintered wood. "Call 911. Henry's buried." "You're hearing the fountain drainage system." Rita crouched beside her, perfectly balanced in her heels, voice honey smooth and utterly reasonable. "It echoes through the pipes. Sounds just like crying, doesn't it? I thought the same thing last week." Michelle's fingers found an air hole drilled into the wood. Henry's small voice leaked through. "Help me, please." She looked up at Rita, understanding flooding cold through her veins. Rita smiled. "You must be exhausted, Michelle, Tiddy. Perhaps you should take the rest of the evening off before you embarrass yourself further." Behind them, footsteps approached. Security. And Michelle realized she had seconds to decide. Keep digging and be dragged away as crazy, or stop and let a child suffocate in the dark. Michelle's hands moved faster, scraping away packed earth from the wooden edges. The crate was maybe 2 feet long, 18 inches down, small enough for a 4-year-old. Crude air holes dotted the top, barely finger width. She could hear Henry's breathing now, rapid and panicked. "Help!" Michelle screamed toward the terrace. "Someone help me! There's a child buried here!" Guests turned. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Rita rose smoothly, her hand already up in a calming gesture as 2 security guards jogged toward them. "I'm so sorry, everyone," she called, her voice carrying that perfect note of concerned embarrassment. "Michelle hasn't been feeling well lately. The stress, I think. Michelle, honey, let's get you inside." "I'm not crazy!" Michelle clawed harder, her fingers bleeding. "Henry's in here. Henry Fredericks is buried in this box." The first security guard reached for her arm. "Ma'am, you need to come with us." "Don't touch me!" She jerked away, digging deeper. Her nails split against wood, but she felt the crate shifting, loosening. "He's right here. Just listen." "She's been saying strange things all much week," Rita told the guards quietly, just loud enough for approaching staff to hear. Talking to herself, missing shifts. "I found anxiety medication in her locker yesterday, empty bottles. I was going to speak to Mr. Fredericks about getting her help, but..." She gestured helplessly at the destroyed garden. "No," Michelle sobbed, still digging. "No, that's not... Michelle." The second guard's voice was firm but not unkind. "Let's go, now." They grabbed her arms, started pulling her backward, and that's when Michelle saw it. Through the largest air hole, in the gap her desperate digging had created, a flash of blue, Henry's striped shirt, and above it, through the slats of the wooden crate, two wide, terrified eyes staring up at her. I see him! Michelle thrashed against the guard's grip. Look! Just look at the hole! But they were dragging her away, and Rita was already kneeling by the disturbed earth, smoothing it over with her bare hands, erasing the evidence. Wait! Douglas Frederick's voice cut through the chaos like a blade. He was running across the terrace, his face bone white. What's happening? Where's Henry? The security guards hesitated, their grip loosening just enough. Michelle wrenched free and threw herself back at the hole, digging with a strength born of pure desperation. Her fingers found the crate's edge, and she pulled, heaved, ripped at the wooden slats until one splintered free. Henry's small hand reached through the gap. Oh my God, someone gasped behind her. Michelle tore at the remaining wood, splinters driving into her palms as the crate came apart. She reached in and pulled Henry out, limp, soil-caked, his lips tinged blue, but his chest moved. Shallow breaths. He was alive. Henry! Douglas crashed to his knees beside them, snatching his son into his arms. Call an ambulance, now! The terrace erupted into controlled chaos. Guests with phones, staff running for the house phone, Douglas cradling Henry against his chest, rocking him, whispering his name over and over. And then Rita was there. Oh God, oh thank God, she sobbed, dropping beside Douglas with perfect theatrical despair. Her hands reached for Henry, trembling. I don't understand. How did this happen? We were playing earlier. He was right beside me. I only looked away for a second. You buried him, Michelle said, her voice hoarse. I saw you. You came out of the garden alone with dirt under your nails. Michelle found him, Rita continued, talking over her, addressing Douglas directly with tears streaming down her face. Thank God she heard something. Thank God. I had no idea. Douglas, I swear, I had no idea he'd wandered off and… You put him there. Michelle lurched forward. You buried him. I watched you come back. You were… Michelle, please. Rita's voice broke beautifully. I know you're upset. We all are. But accusations right now when we should be… She's telling the truth. But even as Michelle said it, she saw the guests' faces. The way they looked at her blood-streaked hands, her dirt-covered uniform, her wild eyes. The way they looked at Rita's designer dress and diamond tears. Douglas stared at Michelle, Henry limp in his arms, confusion and grief warring across his face. And Michelle realized with cold, creeping horror, he was deciding who to believe. A maid covered in dirt and screaming accusations, or the woman he loved, weeping and innocent. The hospital waiting room smelled of antiseptic and old coffee. Michelle sat alone on a plastic chair, still in her ruined uniform, while Douglas paced outside Henry's room. The doctor said the boy would recover, physically. Emotionally was another question. News vans had already gathered in the parking lot. Frederick's heir in tragic accident scrolled across the TV mounted in the corner. Tragic accident. The words made Michelle's stomach turn. He's awake, a nurse announced, asking for his father. Douglas disappeared into the room. Michelle started to follow, but a hand caught her arm. Rita. Walk with me, she said softly, steering Michelle toward a quiet corridor. Her eyes were still red from crying for the cameras, but her grip was iron. You did a brave thing tonight, Michelle. Really. Finding Henry like that. You know what you did. Do I? Rita's smile didn't reach her eyes. Because what I know is that you've been acting strangely for weeks. The other staff have noticed. Missing work, mood swings, and those pills I found in your locker. What pills? The anxiety medication, empty bottles, Michelle. 5 of them. Rita's voice dropped to a whisper. I wanted to help you quietly, but after tonight's breakdown, digging up the garden, screaming accusations, well, people are concerned about your mental state. Michelle's blood went cold. I planted nothing, but if you keep telling your version of events, Rita leaned closer. I'll make sure everyone knows about your obsession with Henry, how you watched him constantly, how you asked inappropriate questions about Douglas's will, how the head housekeeper had to speak to you twice about boundaries. It doesn't matter what's true, Michelle, it matters what people believe. Rita straightened, smoothing her dress. You're a maid who found a child in distress. Be grateful for that story. Because the alternative? Her smile turned glacial. The alternative is you as a mentally unstable woman who endangered a child for attention. And I have 3 staff members who will testify to your erratic behavior. Your choice, Vaughn. She walked away, heels clicking against linoleum. Michelle stood frozen in the fluorescent hallway, understanding blooming like poison in her chest. Rita hadn't just planned to kill Henry. She'd planned for someone to find him. And she'd made sure that someone would be too easy to discredit to matter. Behind her, through the hospital room door, she heard Henry's small, broken voice. Miss Rita said we were playing hide and seek. She said Daddy would find me. But he didn't come. Why didn't he come? Michelle spent 3 days in the public library, hunched over a computer in the corner where no one noticed her. Rita Rollins. The name yielded society page photos, charity galas, foundation work. Perfect, spotless. But Michelle dug deeper. Rita Beaumont, Rita Sinclair, Rita Morrison. The names surfaced like bodies from deep water. Each one attached to a wealthy man. Each relationship ending the same way after a child's tragic death. Montreal, 2019. Rita Beaumont engaged to tech investor Philippe Roux. His 8-year-old daughter Celeste drowned in the family pool during a birthday party. Ruled accidental. Philippe, devastated, leaned on Rita through his grief. They married 6 months later. Divorced 18 months after that when Philippe discovered Rita's gambling debts and forged signatures on his accounts. Michelle's hands shook as she printed the article. There was a phone number for Celeste's maternal grandmother, Marguerite Roux. The call connected after 4 rings. Oui? Mrs. Roux, my name is Michelle Simmons. I'm calling about Rita Beaumont. That monster. The woman's voice turned sharp, decades of French accent cutting through. What has she done now? Michelle told her everything. Henry, the garden, the lies. Celeste knew how to swim, Marguerite said quietly. Like a fish, that child. The police found bruises on her shoulders, like someone held her under. But Rita said Celeste must have hit the pool edge falling. Everyone believed her. Beautiful women who cry, they always believe. I need proof, Michelle whispered. He won't listen to me, but if there's evidence, there's never evidence with Rita. That's her gift. She's careful, patient. Marguerite paused, but she makes one mistake always. She thinks staff are invisible. We're not people to her, just furniture. So we see everything. Michelle thanked her and hung up, mind racing. She had patterns, suspicions, testimony from a grieving grandmother. Maybe it was enough. She found Douglas in his study that evening. Mr. Fredericks, I need 5 minutes. Please, it's about Rita. Michelle. He looked up from his desk, his face drawn with exhaustion. Sit down. She sat, hope flickering. I've been meaning to speak with you, Douglas continued gently, about what happened, the stress you've been under. Rita mentioned you have had some personal struggles lately, and after the incident in the garden, he slid an envelope across the desk. I'm giving you 2 weeks paid leave, and I've arranged for you to speak with someone, a therapist. No judgment, Michelle, we all need help sometimes. The hope died. She's done this before, Michelle said desperately. In Montreal, there was a child. Rita told me you might say something like this. Douglas's voice was kind, pitying. Michelle, I know you think you're helping, but these accusations... He shook his head. Take the time. Get the help. Your job will be waiting. Michelle stared at the envelope. Blood money for her silence, dressed up as concern. She took it because refusing would look crazier. Thank you, sir, she whispered. Outside his study, she leaned against the wall, her entire body shaking. Rita had been right. It didn't matter what was true, only what people believed. And then her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Stop asking questions about Montreal. Stop talking to Marguerite. Or Henry's recovery might have complications. His IV is so easy to access. R. Michelle was in the estate's garden at 3 p.m. when her phone exploded with calls. Douglas, the hospital, Two unknown numbers. Her hands shook as she answered Douglas's third attempt. "Where are you?" His voice was raw, terrified. "The garden. I'm planting the spring bulbs like you asked." Henry's IV was tampered with. Someone injected something into the line. "He's in emergency surgery." A pause, heavy with accusation. Security footage from the hospital was corrupted. But a nurse saw someone in a maid's uniform near his room at 2:45. Dark skin, your height. The world tilted. "I've been here all afternoon. Mr. Fredericks, I swear I haven't left the estate." "The head gardener says you arrived at 3:10. You have no witnesses for where you were before that." Because she'd taken the long route through the backwoods, stopping to bury the printed articles about Montreal in a waterproof box near the oak tree, evidence Rita couldn't find and destroy. Evidence that now made her look guilty of planting false proof. "Check the cameras here," Michelle said desperately. "The estate cameras will show him." Rita already did. "You left through the service entrance at 2:20, returned at 3:10, 50-minute window." His voice cracked. "Michelle, what did you do?" "Nothing, I didn't. Someone's setting me up." "Rita is—" "Enough!" Douglas roared. "My son is dying and you're still making accusations. The police are coming. If you know what's good for you, you'll stay exactly where you are." The line went dead. Michelle stood frozen among the roses, bulbs scattered at her feet. Someone wearing a maid's uniform. Rita's height, Rita's build, anyone could buy the uniform online. The corrupted footage ensured no one could prove it wasn't Michelle. The timing perfectly aligned with her unexplained absence. She'd been hunting evidence in the woods while Rita was at the hospital, creating another crime to pin on her. Sirens wailed in the distance, growing closer. Michelle looked at the main house where Rita stood in an upstairs window, watching. Even from this distance, Michelle could see her smile. She had two choices: stay and be arrested for attempted murder of a child, or run and look even more guilty. The sirens grew louder. Michelle ran. She crashed through the backwoods, branches tearing at her uniform, her lungs burning. She had no phone. She dropped it in the garden. No money, no allies. Just the knowledge that Rita had turned her from rescuer to monster in less than a week. And somewhere Henry was fighting for his life, while his real attacker walked free. Behind her, police radios crackled through the trees. And Michelle realized with cold, absolute certainty, Rita wasn't just framing her. Rita was hunting her. Michelle spent 2 days sleeping in a homeless shelter, her face hidden under a borrowed hood. On the third day, she found Sarah Chen in a cramped office above a Chinese restaurant in Chinatown. The investigative journalist's walls were covered in newspaper clippings, corrupt politicians, corporate fraud, wealthy predators who thought money made them untouchable. "You're the maid everyone's looking for," Sarah said, not bothering with pretense. "Why should I believe you didn't try to kill that kid?" "Because Rita Rollins has done this before, 3 times. Michelle laid out everything. Montreal, Vancouver before that, another fiancé, another dead stepchild, ruled accidental drowning. And before Vancouver, Seattle, a 7-year-old boy who fell from a balcony during a family vacation. Always tragic accidents, always children standing between Rita and money. Sarah's fingers flew across her keyboard. Rita Rollins doesn't exist before 2016. No birth certificate, no school records, nothing. Because she changes names: Rita Beaumont, Rita Sinclair, Rita Morrison in Seattle. Jesus Christ. Sarah pulled up photo after photo, different hair colors, different styles, but the same face, the same calculated smile. She's a ghost, a professional one. Can you prove it? I can prove she's a con artist with multiple identities who targets wealthy widowers and divorcees with children. Sarah leaned back. But proving she committed murder? That's different. The cops investigated each death, found nothing criminal. Because she's careful, she makes it look like accidents, and when someone like me sees the truth, Michelle's voice broke. "No one believes us." "I believe you." Sarah met her eyes. "But belief doesn't hold up in court. I need something concrete, a witness who can't be discredited." Michelle's breath caught. "Henry. He's 4 years old and traumatized. His testimony, He told me she said they were playing hide and seek. He remembers. Michelle stood, decision crystallizing like ice in her chest. If I can talk to him, really talk to him before Rita coaches him into forgetting, the hospital is crawling with cops, looking for you. It's suicide. He's the only proof we have, the only voice that matters. Michelle pulled the hood back over her face. If Rita gets to him first, she'll make sure he never remembers the truth, or worse. She didn't finish the sentence. She didn't have to. Sarah grabbed her jacket. Then we better move fast, because according to my scanner, Douglas is bringing Henry home tomorrow. Back to the estate, back to Rita, where no one would hear him scream. Michelle slipped through the hospital service entrance at 2 a.m., wearing scrubs Sarah had stolen from a laundromat. The pediatric ward was quiet, only one nurse at the station, absorbed in paperwork. Henry's room was at the end of the hall. He was awake, staring at the ceiling, his small face illuminated by the glow of medical monitors. When Michelle stepped inside, his eyes widened. "Miss Michelle," he whispered. "Hey, baby." She knelt beside his bed, her heart breaking at the IV bruises on his arm, the hollows under his eyes. "Can you talk to me about what happened in the garden? I know it's scary, but I need you to remember. Miss Rita said we were playing hide and seek." His voice was so small, so tired. "She said I had to hide in the special box and count to 100. She said Daddy would find me and I'd win a prize." "What happened then?" She closed the box. It was dark. Tears slipped down his cheeks. "I counted and counted, but Daddy didn't come. I called for him, but the box was too tight and the dirt was so heavy, and I couldn't breathe right and—" His breath hitched. "She promised she'd come back. Why didn't she come back?" "Oh, sweetheart." Michelle wiped his tears, her own eyes burning. "Because she never meant to." Behind her, Sarah's camera recorded everything. Dr. Patricia Moore, the child psychologist Sarah had convinced to come, stood witness, her face grim. "Henry, you're being so brave," Dr. Moore said gently. "Can you tell us, did Miss Rita seem like she was playing a game?" At first, Henry's fingers twisted the blanket. But when she closed the box, her face changed. She wasn't smiling anymore. She looked mean and she said something. Michelle's breath stopped. "What did she say?" "She said, 'Sleep tight, little obstacle. Some things are worth more than other things.'" Henry's voice dropped to a confused whisper. "What's an obstacle, Miss Michelle?" The door slammed open. Rita stood in the doorway, Douglas and 2 security guards behind her. Her face was a mask of maternal horror. "Get away from him!" She rushed forward, pushing Michelle aside, gathering Henry into her arms. "What are you doing to my son?" "Douglas, call the police." She's trying to manipulate him, to make him say. "Everything he just said was recorded," Sarah said, stepping forward with her camera. "Along with Dr. Moore's professional assessment that this is genuine testimony from—" "You brought press?" Douglas stared at Michelle, betrayal written across his face. "You're exploiting my son for a story?" "I'm exposing a murderer," Michelle said. "You're a fugitive manipulating a traumatized child." Rita's voice shook with perfect maternal rage. "Henry, baby, you don't have to listen to her lies anymore. Tell Daddy the truth. Tell him Michelle is scaring you." Henry looked between them, small and confused and terrified, and Michelle saw Rita's hand tighten on his shoulder. A warning, a threat. "Choose the right answer, little boy, or else." "Enough," Douglas's voice cut through the hospital room like steel. "I want the truth, all of it, and I want it in the place where this started." The rose garden at dawn was cold, mist clinging to the thorns. Police stood at the perimeter, Sarah with her camera, Moore with Henry's testimony, and Marguerite Roux, flown in from Montreal, her aged face carved with grief and determination. Douglas stood at the center, Henry clinging to his leg, Rita beside them, immaculate in cashmere, her expression serene. Michelle faced them all, her heart hammering. "Show them," Sarah said quietly. Michelle held up the evidence bag. Forensics lifted fingerprints from inside the crate. Not just the outside, the inside, where someone would touch while placing a child in and sealing it closed. Rita's smile never wavered. Obviously, my prints are there. I pulled Henry out after Michelle found him. I was frantic. These prints were under the dirt, Michelle interrupted. Under layers of soil that got inside when the box was buried. They were there before he was found. The detective stepped forward, studying the report. His expression shifted. There's more, Sarah said. She pulled up photos on her tablet. Rita Rollins, Rita Beaumont, Rita Sinclair, Rita Morrison, 4 identities, 3 dead children, all stepchildren of wealthy men, all ruled accidents. She turned the screen toward Douglas, and all with the same pattern: get engaged, eliminate the child who inherits, comfort the grieving father, access the fortune. This is absurd. Rita's voice remained calm, but something flickered behind her eyes. Conspiracy theories from a desperate woman in tabloid journalism. My granddaughter Celeste knew how to swim, Marguerite said, her voice shaking with decades of suppressed fury. She had lessons since she was 3, but you held her under until she stopped fighting, didn't you? Just like you buried Henry alive. I love Celeste. You cashed her trust funds 6 months after her funeral. Rita's composure cracked, just slightly. This is ridiculous. Douglas, tell them. The crate, Michelle said quietly. We kept it, as evidence. There's something else inside. She nodded to the detective, who produced another evidence bag. Inside, a small plastic case, waterproof, sealed. He opened it. A handwritten note, in Rita's distinctive script. Contingency plan. If child survives initial attempt, frame the help. M. Simmons, unstable, obsessed, perfect scapegoat. Plant medication, establish witnesses, create hospital incident. The garden went silent. Douglas stared at the note, his face draining of color. You planned all of this? That's not my handwriting. Rita started, but her voice had lost its smoothness. It matches the thank you cards you wrote for the charity auction, Sarah said. We verified with a handwriting expert. Rita looked around, at the police, at the evidence, at Douglas's horror-struck face, and something changed. The mask she'd worn for months, maybe years, finally slipped away. You want the truth? Her voice turned cold, empty. Fine. Yes, I buried the little brat. Yes, I plan to frame the maid, because that's how this works. Men like you, Douglas, you are so blinded by loneliness and flattery that you can't see what's right in front of you. She laughed, bitter and sharp. Your son was worth $800 million in trust funds. $800 million standing between me and the life I deserved. So yes, I put him in a box and buried him like the obstacle he was. Henry made a small, broken sound. And it would have worked, Rita continued, her eyes blazing, if not for the help. The invisible little maid who nobody listens to, who nobody sees. Except she saw me. She heard him. Her gaze fixed on Michelle with pure hatred. You should have stayed in your place. Her place, Michelle said quietly, was saving a child you tried to murder. Rita lunged toward Henry, but Douglas swept his son behind him. Police moved in, handcuffs already out. You don't understand, Rita hissed as they grabbed her arms. People like you, like her. She jerked her chin toward Michelle. You're nothing. Servants, children, obstacles in the way of people who matter. My son matters, Douglas said, his voice breaking. And so does she. He looked at Michelle, tears streaming down his face. I'm sorry, God, Michelle. I'm so sorry. Rita screamed as they dragged her away, her perfect composure shattered into something ugly and feral. And then there was silence, broken only by Henry's quiet sobs. Michelle knelt down. Henry pulled away from his father and ran to her, throwing his small arms around her neck. You came back, he whispered. You said you'd help, and you came back. Always, babe, Michelle said, her own tears falling into his golden hair. I'll always come back. Douglas approached slowly as if afraid she'd vanish. I didn't believe you. I chose her over. You loved her, Michelle said simply. She knew how to use that. How do I? He gestured helplessly at everything. The garden, his son, the destruction Rita had left behind. How do I make this right? Michelle looked at Henry, still clinging to her. At Marguerite, wiping tears from her weathered cheeks. At Sarah, camera finally lowered. At the roses blooming around them, beautiful and oblivious to the horror they'd witnessed. "You listen," Michelle said. "When people tell you something's wrong, when the invisible ones speak up, you listen." 6 months later, Michelle stood in that same garden, but everything had changed. Henry played nearby, his laughter genuine now, therapy slowly healing the trauma. Douglas had sold the estate, too many ghosts, but kept the garden, turning it into a memorial for children lost to domestic violence. And Michelle Shawayam, she was no longer a maid. She was director of the Fredericks Foundation for Child Safety, her voice finally heard, her testimony having helped convict Rita Rollins on 3 counts of murder and 2 of attempted murder. The woman who was once invisible had become impossible to ignore because she'd done the one thing Rita never expected. She'd refused to stay silent. If this story moved you, don't keep it to yourself. Like this video if you believe Michelle's courage deserves to be celebrated. If you believe that every voice matters, no matter how invisible the world tries to make us. Share this story with someone who needs to hear it. Share it with anyone who's ever been dismissed, overlooked, or told their truth doesn't matter. Share it because stories like this remind us that heroes don't always wear capes. Sometimes they wear maids' uniforms and bleeding hands from digging through lies. Comment below. Have you ever witnessed injustice but felt too powerless to speak up? Have you ever been the invisible one in the room? Tell us your story. Your voice matters here. And subscribe. Hit that button and turn on notifications because we're bringing you more stories where the overlooked become heroes, where truth fights through lies, and where justice, delayed but never denied, finally blooms like roses in the spring. We're building a community of people who believe that every life matters, every voice deserves to be heard, and that sometimes the most powerful person in the room is the one everyone forgot was watching. Don't just watch. Be part of the story. Subscribe now.